Hello, I want to thank everybody for joining me today to watch me do some live digital painting on this Spider-Gwen piece that we started working on a couple days ago. So let's just jump right into it here. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that as I work. All right, so last time I kind of was mostly working on here in the leggings here. Still finding a little bit of a trouble area there, but I'm going to leave it for now. I think I really want to right now start putting in more of the white part of the costume up here. So just so I don't have to worry about the work that I've already done, I'm just going to do another layer and put that layer under the layer that I've already worked on, just so they don't overlap. So I'm just going to start off with kind of what the darkest color is going to be. I like working from dark to light because that's how I learned to paint traditionally. But it works really good digitally too. So I'm just going in here, laying down the flat color first, and then I like to paint in the highlights after that to form my shapes. Let's just get this going. There's two ways of doing this. I could color it kind of the way I'm doing it, or you can just use the fill tool, like outline it all and use the fill tool. It just is whatever I'm in the mood for that day. I find it a little bit of a pain sometimes, the fill tool. The fill tool in this program is vastly superior than most programs, this Clip Studio Paint fill tool, since it can actually fill gaps better than some of the other programs like Photoshop. I forgot there's just a little piece of another color in the costume of that part, so I'm just going in there fixing that. But I'm still not entirely familiar, as one of the reasons why I started this series was to learn Clip Studio Paint better. And I'm still not an expert at it, still learning, but I am really enjoying what I have learned. I do enjoy painting and drawing in it. I originally started using it just for like digital inking for black and white artwork. But have recently really been enjoying it more as a digital painting experience. Once I finally got some brushes in there that I liked, I think it was Ahmed Al-Duri who I'm using his brushes. I looked it up the other day. I should have wrote it down. It's a fellow art YouTuber who does really good videos, but they also had some custom brushes there, and I didn't want to take the time to make my own brushes, so I tried his out and they were working good so far. Pretty much had everything that I was looking for anyways in my brushes. I'm just going to up the size of my brush here just to fill in this section. And we'll see how far I get today. Yesterday my back was a little bit sore and I decided to skip my usual like workout for my back, which would be like lifting weights. I usually just do some rows and some pullovers and stuff like that. But my back was bothering me, so I thought, well, maybe I'll just do something more cardio based that works the back. So I did like 3-minute rounds on the heavy bag. I used to teach martial arts years and years and years ago, so I've always kind of kept up with it. I've tried a bunch of different styles, so just a white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but unfortunately I can no longer train at the place I was training at. Just the timing for their classes just never worked out with my schedule, unfortunately. So I did about 4 to 6 months there. I can't really remember exactly which. And then I did 4 or 5 years of Taekwondo originally, and then I did 2 to 3 years of Muay Thai. And but right now I've had a hip injury for about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. I had tendonitis in my hip and it just never really healed right. So I don't do as much kicking as I used to do, so I just hit the bag. But now my hand is sore and my back is even more sore than it was. So it probably wasn't the best decision to do that as a workout instead. I probably should have just if I was going to do cardio, I should have just did the elliptical or something like that. I just have a cheap elliptical in my basement I got used for $50 right before everything happened with what's going on in the world right now. So I got it for a good price. But I finally have kind of like the home gym I've always wanted, which is nice. So I've got I couldn't have a hanging heavy bag because we don't own this place. We're renting a house right now. And I didn't want to do anything that would, where I'd have to drill into any of the beams down in the basement or anything. But I got a double XL Wavemaster, which is pretty good. It does the job. As a training tool, I wouldn't suggest it over a hanging heavy bag, but in some situations, it's the best. It's the best option. I do want to put a double M bag down there. I do have a double M bag. It's just really old, and I think the bladder is done inside of it, so to get a new one of those. So this hand here, I made it a little large, trying to create perspective. Sometimes I'll go a little bit overboard with that, and I think also I used I wasn't liking it, didn't have enough perspective, so I was using the transform tool to kind of stretch it out, and the shape isn't quite the way I want it. So I'm just gonna go in here and kind of sculpt away bits and make it closer to the way it should be. One of the nice things about digital is that you can work and work and work it. I said last time, stuff can get muddy, but the nice thing about digital is that you can just cover it and rework that area and it won't be muddy anymore. That's a luxury you don't get when working traditionally. I'm just going to lower the opacity of this layer a little so I can see what's below, just so I can see my guidelines and my line work here. So I'm just kind of getting where the rib cage and stuff is. Now, one thing you can do too is you can definitely select that layer by pressing Control and clicking on the layer. That way you can't color out of the lines. But then you kind of get sometimes like a real digital sharp edge and it looks like it's on a different layer. So you just gotta be cognizant of that. And you'll have to go back in usually after and make that look a little bit more natural transition. Now here's where learning anatomy and stuff helps. Bodybuilding magazines. Instagram's probably the best. Just follow a bunch of Instagram influencers nowadays, that fitness influencers, and you'll get tons of shots of people in every single position you can think of. Like for this pose here, I actually reference mostly like female sprinters. Just for that leg position, kind of see where how the muscles actually fall in movement. Like you can kind of wing it if you just know anatomy, but really well. But it definitely helps to see like how stuff actually moves. Sometimes it can actually look odd if you're overly faithful to muscle positions, because they contract and they move about on your body when you're doing any kind of extreme athletics. So it's a thing to just watch and know, work on. I think there's a book called like about fitness that it's like strength training anatomy, and it's all like beautifully illustrated with drawn anatomy over like kind of workout positions of like, say a person's doing like hammer curls or something. It kind of shows you, just to show you what muscles are getting worked. But it's fantastic reference if you're an artist. I've often just used if you Google that book, a lot of the images from it are actually on like Google Images. So if you can't afford the book, definitely support it if you think it could be useful for what you're learning. But if you're broke like me, just do what you can with it. It'll probably end up being a lot lighter than this, but just kind of want to get stuff in there. Like I said in the last video, it's kind of working on the ambient light. So just getting the shapes so they look round first, and then we can greater kind of work on the way the actual scene lighting would affect the shapes. Now, yesterday I had a nice surprise. I had done a piece of artwork of a fellow YouTuber that I follow, fitness influencer. Well, I would say fitness YouTuber, I guess. Derek from More Plates, More Dates. And he reposted some artwork, fan artwork I just did. And so I got a nice little bump of likes and subscribers from him. So I just want to thank him on here. And if you guys want some good information, I definitely suggest checking him out, especially if you're wondering like what kind of supplementation you should be doing and stuff like that, what actually works and what doesn't. Like, I don't think there is a better resource out there than his channel. So if you're a person who came over from that, thank you for continuing and clicking through his link and checking out what I do. I got a pretty new channel here, not even really, barely a couple months old here. So I'm just kind of just getting started. So anything like that's a major help. I'm gonna have to look up reference for a hoodie here, because folds here work as just kind of something that you put in line art, but they're not really working quite the way I need them to work for a digital painting. I'm gonna deselect that layer so I can kind of see better how that's turning out. So I am liking that. I do need to go quite a bit lighter. I'm liking the way that this is kind of looking like this is the tone I was looking for, more kind of like I was using art felts, like alcohol-based felts. It's very much got that kind of look to it, which I am liking for the tone of her stuff here, but I do have to lighten up quite a bit since it is kind of like a bright white in her costume here. So I'm just going to slowly work that in. Now I'm not really worrying too much about going out of the lines, because I'm going to have to here just to soften up that edge. I don't want a hard edge around the drawing. It's something that early on your art you'll probably do a lot of outlining of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's definitely a viable style. But as you progress, definitely try to get rid of kind of that outliney look, just as a practice to get your art to more like photorealism idea, which I always say photorealism should not be your goal, because that's, if you're just copying photographs and stuff, it's good practice, but I don't think it'll make you progress as much as an artist. So you're not really putting together your own compositions and stuff. So definitely I encourage people to use it as a tool to learn. There's nothing wrong with that being your style, but there's a lot of wildlife artists and landscape artists that do that, but I think it kind of stunts your ability to kind of just learn shorthand and the speed at which you know how to work, unless you're doing kind of more of a style in the sense of more like palette paint or palette knife painting, where you're using a lot of tricks in shorthand, kind of like Bob Ross kind of thing. I don't know, did anybody watch the Bob Ross documentary on Netflix that just came out? It's pretty interesting. It's never nice to see a person get taken advantage of, but hopefully that whole situation can come to light. And what's the quote? Sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. So bringing stuff to light tends to help in creating the solution to some of these problems. Yeah, I need to get this. I have it kind of like this straight line, like it's pulling really hard. I just don't think hoodies really do that. It's more of a rounded thing there. Let me go and get that there. And then this, I'm gonna kind of need that to feel more connected to it. Then what we'll do is we'll have to probably have that more of an open portion of the hoodie at the back here. Sorry, my hand's cramping. I'll probably have my sensitivity set too low or something, but why am I not getting? I need to grab a darker tone here. So I don't know. Maybe we'll, if that's open, that goes that way. On the inside. So I'll have to figure that one out and look at some reference here. Give my hand also some rest. Even hitting a softer heavy bag like a Wavemaster, if you're hitting as hard as you can for 15 minutes, you tend to get a little bit of crampage in your hand. Of course, they're all from like very straight on behind. All the reference I'm seeing here. Let me find. That's not bad. I'm just gonna copy and paste in some thing from Google Image here, just so you guys know what I'm actually referencing here. So I'm just looking at that hoodie. Now it's going to be way thicker material than what her outfit is, definitely, but so let's just bring in a few of those shapes. Keep that a little bit thicker. And then we're bring kind of fold here. And then we can eraser. Oh, one thing to make sure when you do that is to make sure you're on the right layer when you start painting. But okay, oops, wrong tool. Control Z, your best friend, working as a digital artist. Undo, 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 undo. Put down a line, undo it. Put down another line, undo it. It can be a bad habit a little bit when you start going back to working traditionally. And I remember I was drawing something. I got so used to working digitally that I kept doing the hand motion for Control Z. Like tried to erase stuff. Like, this just becomes such muscle memory that you don't even realize that you're doing it. So we'll just kind of copy a little bit of the shapes and lines here. It's got a seam on this one, but I don't know if I'm gonna do that. So I don't know if I'll do the kind of like puckering at the seam that it's getting there. But now if I go in here, go back to better paintbrush for that. Go in there, yeah. Already looking a lot more like an actual hoodie. Shape. Never feel bad about using reference. Every artist uses reference. A lot of the, I think I talked about this last time, like Rembrandt using basically almost like a camera and just kind of filling in what he was, his composition. At least that's the current theory of how he did things, but so Neil Adams talks about that, how often he'll use tracing in his work. Great comic book artist Neil Adams, one of the all-time greats. Did a lot of work on Batman in the 80s. Also did a ton on for rights for artists back then. I'm just going to delete that reference. Don't really need it anymore. But yeah, that's looking much better already. Now, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to go to, unfortunately, I can't get my menus to show up because I can't do just a screen capture in OBS. For some reason, it's always grayed out, and I've tried every fix that people have shown online. And so right now I'm going to edit, I'm going to tonal correction, and I'm going to hue, saturation, and luminosity. What's going on here? Okay. I'm just going to push the color around a little bit, the color. I want it a little bluer, I think. Now I can... Now, sometimes just to get it in the range you want, just put the saturation up, and then you know, okay, that's purple, that's bluer. Want a little bit of a purplish blue, and then I'll just cut that saturation back down. Brightness was okay. 0. Okay, so I just have my hue slider open, so I just slid hue down, and then I slid my saturation up a tad, but I'm going to bring that back down until it's where I think I want it. Okay, now what I think also is I want that to be cool, but I want a warmer white tone here. So I'm just going to go in here. I'm just going to start adding a little bit of a warmer tone. Oh, it's a little saturated, so I'm just going to bring the saturation down a little bit on that. It's just going to make it, some more contrast, having such a cool color and a warm color. Plus, I think I am gonna do it as a nighttime picture, and there's gonna be a lot of ambient light coming from this direction, and that will most likely be a warmer amber light. Oh, I don't like that. I'm just going to take that back. Control Z a bunch. Someone keeps texting me here, and I'm just going to check. Oh, nothing important here. I'm just going to up that saturation back up. We had it a little bit see-through to see the lines underneath. I can get rid of that now. Now it's still a little dark overall, so I'll just keep working it and lightening it up. Boy, non-stop here on my indications on my phone, but I don't really see anything here. If you're wondering why I can hear it I have some music playing in my headphone in my ear here. If you're wondering how I'm hearing this. Okay. Let's just do that there. Just lightening up everything here. Just doing it in the shapes. Just to keep the shape that I have there, but lighten it up. So just keep working it. It's in the right shape. Now I've gone way out of lines here, but I will. Not too worried about that. Can always go with my eraser tool and clean up all those lines after. Plus I'm going to be going over this section in here anyways, so I'm not really too worried about it. Maybe a little bit. Traps are maybe looking a little too big. So easiest way is just take some of the shadow down in there. That'll flatten it out, make it look less 3D. And just slightly going over, working it. Just adding in some of that warmth too to the cool tones we've introduced to her costume. A little bit of a horseshoe shaped tricep there. Let's see. Okay, so far I'm liking that, but just to, I think I'm gonna move on to this color here. I just want it all kind of looking kind of correct first. I'm just gonna look up some Spider-Gwen reference just so I make sure I get kind of the tonality of, so it's usually like a pinkish tone. So we'll go in there now with a pinker color. Kind of like a bubblegum pink, looks like. Looking up kind of like, good thing also to look up is like the way people cosplay certain stuff. This will give you a better idea of like how stuff really interacts with light and stuff. How these colors. All right. I'm just going to keep it on the same layer here this time. I'm not too worried this time about it going in or out. And I'm starting with kind of a mid-tone this time with this one. Just because I'm going to find probably that I might have to play with this color quite a bit more. The shape that is looking off. You kind of want it more like that. Get some more roundness to the area there. Just filling this all in. This is what you'll often hear called flatting. When they color comic books, this is kind of the way that they do it. They'll put down a color, and then they can just select the layer with that color, or just do a magic brush tool selection, and then they can do their shading on it or do any edits of the tone of that color with the hue, saturation. It's a good way to learn too. Digital painting is to work like that. Coloring books, same kind of idea. Like anything that's gonna let you work with just worrying about tone and not shape. All of that's good exercise for learning to digital paint. This one has to be shown through on this side. Okay, now what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to go down. As it gets darker, I desaturate it a little bit. Oh, too much. Could just be my brush. Yeah, it's going to get a less aggressive brush here. And we will go in there and something going on here with the way I have the tricep. It's incorrect. It's a little too high up, the connection point. So I'm just going to move her tricep muscle down, and her shoulder is going to be more prominent there. And you can see in here, if I zoom in, there's a lot of this like line over line over line. It's up to you if you like that or not. You can always go in with, there's a tool I like is the gouache blender, and that will smoothen all of that out. Early on here, I'm not too worried about it. And let's bring the tricep muscle longer down there. And we will now I want this kind of to be the less reflective color, so or kind of like material wise, it won't be as reflective as kind of the white. So I'm probably not going to go as heavy with the shading in here. Keep it more of a monotone, singular tone. Not as extreme lights and darks. I'm going to add kind of more like a shimmer to this with a pure white highlights or a warm white, off-white kind of highlight in there at some point. But what I want to do is just grab this here, bubblegummy color, and I want, what I think I'm going to do is straighten out that a little bit. Just depending on where her muscle insertions would probably be. It's kind of a tough one. Come on. Make sure I have the right style brush. All right. The reason why I did want to put this in, because it's much more of a saturated color, and I do want to make sure that I am kind of going the right direction with the white, which is still way too dark. So I will need to work on that. I'm just going in with kind of like a harder edged brush right now just to get some highlight in there. I'm just gonna start, and then I can always soften stuff up. I also made that a little bit more, pushed it more in the purple direction just to add more coherency with everything else. And kind of being kind of streaky here. There is a reason for that. It's to kind of more of a shimmer. I decided I might want to actually have that a little bit of shimmer going on to that too. So basically the way you can just kind of sorry, brain fart. I don't know what I was talking about. Getting caught up here. Much better. Let's go. If you really want, like, you can start putting kind of more like specular highlights kind of in there if you want it to be something that's going to good way of doing that is to do kind of like a dot. Just having trouble getting the right shape. Get specular highlight and then kind of stuff that coming off of that. That's going to give it kind of a more shimmery feel to that fabric and material. Another thing you can do is let me get a thinner, too thin. There we go. Yeah, it's kind of like add kind of some almost segmented highlights coming out there too, and they tend to get kind of like a string of a highlight. And just keep working that brighter. I'm just gonna go in there a little bit darker. So first my pen is squeaking. Now I'm gonna go back into here. See what I can do here. So I'm just kind of just putting in some brighter highlights there. Another thing I'll probably end up doing is kind of bringing these kind of tones into there. You kind of want almost like a universal shading tone, so the things don't look like they're painted separately like they currently do. But I'll probably do that at the nearer to the end. Now, also, just for right now, just to give me a better idea of how color is going to play, I'm just going to throw in kind of a dark backdrop color. That will just let me kind of, is that on, which layer is that on? Oh, that's on this layer. I'm just going to turn that to multiply. Wrong layer. I'm going to turn the blue layer I just put in to multiply. And I'm going to darken that a little bit more. Desaturate it a little bit more. As things get further away, they're going to be more desaturated. There we go. I'm just going to go in here now, grab the kind of tone and what? Come on. What am I getting? Try this brush. Am I not? Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Ha ha ha. That would do it. Just trying to get some more contrast there. That a little bit bigger. Brush. Pull that back. Sorry, I've kind of gone quiet here. Just, as you can see, I'm just darkening these areas here, trying to create some more depth there. It will also help bring this all kind of together into one cohesive part here. Just so the shading looks more like it's carrying over. It's nice to bring in the tones that you're using in other parts. It's just going to help blend that all into one cohesive piece a little bit better. Okay, let's zoom out again. See how that's working. I'm just gonna grab a more harder edge brush. This one's probably better. By harder edge brush, I just mean it doesn't have any softness to it. So it's like, I don't know. Let me change color here for a second. So it's like that, as opposed to something like this. That's kind of a softer trail edge. This has a hard trail edge. You can kind of see that's kind of a hard edge ending, and then this has a soft edge. And I'm thinking I've probably oversaturated the pink stuff a little bit. But I'm going to finish up kind of this in here like that. And then I will probably, what I'll probably end up doing is I'll probably go in here like this and just cut that section. And I'll have to fix up the edges where it meets the other colors probably, but I'll probably go in there, go to hue, saturation, and the tonal correction again, and I'll probably just bump that saturation down, and I might bump the luminosity down a bit too, but we'll see. So that's it before, that's it after. But we'll see. Once I get the skin tone in there, that'll help with that a lot. But so far we've almost gone an hour. You know what? I think I am just going to throw in a skin tone for her here. I am going to do that one on a different layer again, just for now. What I'll probably do once the figure herself is like completely done, I'll probably flatten those, and then I'll go in kind of like what I was doing here with the darkening, just kind of making it all kind of blend together a little bit better, more seamless. Now skin tones, there's a couple different ways of doing it. Again, this time I think I'm just going to grab kind of like a mid-tone-ish. I'm just playing around with being a Caucasian person. We're going to try to push this more that peach way, but to be honest, when you're painting traditionally, you tend to go more with like a kind of like a brown base, and then yellow. But you'll also usually in your underpainting put some blue in the shadows and some more reddish tone in the highlights, and then when you paint over that, some of that still comes through and gives the skin a lot more depth. It's just more, I find it more difficult to do that in that order digitally, where I find if you do that order, if you kind of do the opposite of that order digitally, you can definitely go back in and on a lighter layer just add in your like blue tones, it's gonna, and reddish tones to kind of help fill out the variation in skin tone. But it just depends on your piece, because some pieces you want that, other ones it's not as, you're not really going, like I said, you're not really going towards that photorealism. But if you were, definitely would want to go that way. There are people that are really good at doing like doing the textures of the skin very well. I don't go that step. Nothing wrong with people who do that, but it's just something I haven't really done. Because I've never really, since I come more from comics and stuff like that, it's just not really appealing to me for it to have that. Generally, the texture that you get from your canvas or from your brush is usually good enough for me. Let's bring that down a little bit, just so you can get some highlight in there. I'm going to push that a little bit more orange, more towards the yellow in the highlight. I'm just going to go in here. I was probably smarter, instead of what I'm doing here is maybe I'll do it that way. So I'll keep that, pump up that saturation back up by increasing the opacity, then bring my line drawing over, and I will put my line drawing to multiply, and I will lower that opacity. I just find it more distracting. Like, you can see all these like lines and stuff in there a little bit more than when I'm doing it the other way. But it doesn't really matter, I guess. Make sure you're always on the proper layer. Naming your layers is always smart. Since I only have 3 here, I'm not really worrying about it. And since I'm going to be collapsing this layer, I'm not really worrying about it. By collapsing, I mean I'm just going to join it with the other layers that are part of the skin tone. So I'm just kind of working my shapes. Like the ambient, like I said, you just kind of want to get what's going to be round, and then I'll go back more in and work the directional lighting. Oh, here I am gonna grab a blender. I just because I really quickly put all that kind of shape in there and just smoothing it out. This is something I would do traditionally too with a dry brush. I would go in there while the paint's still wet and kind of do some mixing, pushing stuff around. Works really nice for the blending brush works really nice in the skin tones here to get them down, and then we'll go in there with harder paint brushes in parts after. That line should be more going towards her chin, the edge of her chin. But I'm just going to push her chin out a little bit more. Proportions, I don't know. You'll see a bunch of people with a bunch of rules about facial proportions, but they're really, nature doesn't really follow them. So you can have a little bit of leeway. Basically, you want kind of like your tip of your nose, your lips, and your chin to kind of be in line there. But that's not entirely true either. Some people's faces, this is more pushed in, some it's more pushed out. This isn't really based on any certain person. I think I probably did use some sort of reference, mostly for the hair. Ears is an interesting one. For years, because I worked mostly in black and white pen and ink, I would not really put much detail into them. And they would look great that way. But these days I put a little bit more. Now that I've really, my style has been more, I really enjoy digital painting almost more than pen and ink right now. I don't know why. It's just right now I really enjoy playing with color, and I think that's one thing you'll see in my work is like the way I use color is way different now than it used to be. But let's see. Yeah, see that skin tone and the face and stuff there is looking really good right now. I notice on my secondary monitor here, it is looking a tad more brown toned than on my drawing screen here. So I'll just have to, usually I'll color correct on my other monitor. This monitor isn't the greatest for that kind of stuff. So now, even though her hair is blonde, I'm gonna go in there with just a solid color right now of brown. This is gonna be the undertone. It's a little too saturated. I need to get rid of that. And let's go in there. Now you'll notice I don't really work in any kind of specific order. I jump around a lot. That's keep interest. And also keeps me from overworking areas that I'm currently having trouble with. You might come back a different day and you will not have any of the issues that you have currently with it. Like if you notice you're struggling with something. It's just weird. I think it just is down to you'll get bored of a certain area, and it really will help to just take time away from that area, go work on some other part. This is probably not dark enough either, but if I keep it a solid color here, I can always magic tool, selection tool, pick it and change the hue and saturation. But I'm just gonna leave that probably for now. And I think we're gonna call it a day here soon. For the inner eye, I usually go with more of a pinkish tone. I know some people use more like a bluish tone. You can do that because it isn't incorrect. There is a bluish gray often to people's eye, but it's not colors aren't uniform. Like usually around the edge you'll actually see it's more reddish tone. It really depends though on what light is hitting it, what colors things will be. But anyways, so this is kind of where we're at right now. I'll do one more thing I think here. I'm just gonna grab kind of a, I know that her shoes are actually her ballet slippers are kind of a more of this aquamarine kind of color. So I'm just gonna put those in right now. It's just gonna feel more like when I come back to it that there's more areas that I can work on and start at, instead of limiting myself to one kind of selection area where I have to start it from scratch. And it's just little tricks that you do to like keep yourself, your motivation and everything. So let's turn off the drawing there, and still a ways to go on this character so far, but that gives us a good kind of flat base to kind of work from. So yeah, I think that's where we're going to end it today. And so if you have any questions about anything, then please just leave them in below. And next time we will try to get further along on this piece. And thank you for joining me. And if you join me from Derek's Instagram, if you found me that way, thank you, and I hope you enjoy this kind of content. And I'm really trying to grow this YouTube thing. So if you can share with anybody that you think might be interested in this kind of stuff, definitely please do. I would appreciate it. All right. So thank you, everybody. Keep creative.